People often think that love in Hollywood is loud. They think it is about flashing cameras, red carpets, and dramatic confessions. But sometimes, the most powerful love begins quietly, without planning, without expectation, just two hearts learning to breathe in the same rhythm. That is how this story began. With silence, with patience, and with two people who never asked to fall for each other. KeanuReeves and Sandra Bullock had known each other for many years. They met long ago on a film set when they were both young, curious, and unsure of who they were going to become in the world. Back then, they shared laughter, jokes, warm teas between long filming hours, and small looks that held meaning no one else understood. The world saw chemistry. They saw safety, home, gentleness, but neither of them said anything. Not out loud. Years passed. Life changed. They lived separate lives. Love came and went. Grief came and stayed. Fame grew heavy. Time kept moving. But every time they met again, even after long distances of silence and years apart, something inside both of them softened. Like the heart remembered a familiar place and whispered, "You are safe here." On this particular morning, Sandra sat in a quiet cafe away from cameras and crowds. She loved quiet mornings where no one was watching her. She stirred her coffee slowly, staring out of the window. She didn't know why her heart felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the weight of always needing to appear fine. Or maybe it was because she missed something she could not name. The door opened, and a soft chime rang. Sandra looked up. Keanu walked in. It wasn't dramatic. There was no music. No spotlight. Just two souls recognizing each other instantly. He smiled. A small, gentle smile that reached his eyes. "May I sit?" he asked. She nodded, and something inside her eased. Like her heart exhaled. They talked about simple things first. Work, life, memories. But beneath the soft laughter, there was something unspoken, something warm, something that had lived quietly in their hearts for years, waiting for the right moment to rise. After a while, Sandra looked at him closely. His eyes looked tired but peaceful, older but softer, stronger but quieter. She said, "You look different." Keanu nodded slowly. "I have learned to carry things differently now," he said, "lighter, where I can, gentler, where I should." Sandra felt those words. They touched a place in her that still hurt. She whispered, "I am tired of being strong all the time." Keanu looked at her with a softness that could melt stone. "You do not have to be strong with me," he said. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not look away. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel the need to hide. They sat in silence, a warm, quiet silence where two hearts rested for a moment. Then Keanu said something unexpected, not dramatic, not loud, just honest. "I have wanted to tell you something for a long time." Sandra looked at him, her heart suddenly beating faster. Keanu's voice remained calm, steady, full of deep truth. "I once thought that if life were different, I would have married you." Sandra froze. Her breath stopped. Her fingers tightened around her cup. It was not a joke. It was not a line. It was a truth that had lived inside him for years, and she had never known. Sandra did not speak at first. The cafe around them continued as if nothing had changed. People stirred their drinks. Quiet music played softly. A spoon clinked against a glass somewhere in the background. But inside Sandra, everything felt suddenly still. Like time had stopped only for her. Her heart beat slowly, heavy as she looked at Keanu. He had spoken the words calmly, not afraid, not nervous, just honest. It felt like he had been carrying them for a long time, waiting for the right moment to let them breathe. Finally, her voice came out, quiet and unsure. "You would have married me." Keanu nodded once. Yes, there was no hesitation. "No doubt." Sandra's eyes lowered to the table. She tried to understand why hearing those words made something inside her both bloom and ache at the same time. "Why didn't you ever say anything before?" she whispered. Keanu took a slow breath. Not a heavy one. A thoughtful one. "Because timing matters," he said. "Back then we were young. We were learning ourselves, not ready to learn each other. I was afraid of losing you if I spoke too soon." Sandra closed her eyes. She understood that fear. Sometimes losing someone you care about feels worse than never having the chance to try. She opened her eyes again, and now she asked softly. Keanu looked at her carefully, with the same gentle focus he had always held when it came to her. "When grief came into my life," he said, "I closed many doors. I thought I would never open my heart again, that it was safer to feel nothing than to risk losing someone again. But you were always the exception. You never demanded. You never pushed. You simply stayed kind, even when we were far, even when we were silent." Sandra felt warmth rise in her chest. She did not know she had that effect on him. She had always admired Keanu for his stillness, his depth, his quiet way of carrying the world. She had never thought he admired something in her too, but a question rose in her mind like a shadow. She asked softly, almost afraid of the answer, "Then why now? Why tell me this now?" Keanu looked out the window for a moment. His eyes reflected something deep, something shaped by years of living, loving, losing, growing. "Because life is short," he said, "and I do not want to leave anything unsaid anymore." Those words hit her like a quiet wave. She swallowed. Keanu continued, his tone still soft, steady. "I do not expect anything from you. I do not ask for an answer. I only wanted you to know that in another life or another time, I would have chosen you." Tears gathered at the edges of Sandra's eyes, but she did not let them fall. She looked at him with a fragile, brave kind of honesty. "I always felt something too," she whispered. "I just never knew what to call it. Friendship, comfort, something safe, something warm." Her voice trembled. Maybe it was love. Maybe it still is. Keanu did not move. He did not reach for her hand. He let her words exist on their own. "You do not need to decide anything today," he said. But before he could say more, the cafe door opened sharply. The quiet moment cracked. A reporter walked in. He looked directly at them, and in an instant, Sandra and Keanu realized someone had followed them. Someone had heard. And the story that was meant to remain private was about to become public. The reporter stood near the door, holding a phone that was already recording. Sandra felt her chest tighten. Keanu's expression did not change, but there was a stillness in his eyes, a quiet shift, like a calm sea before a storm. The cafe, once warm and private, suddenly felt too small, too open, too exposed. The reporter spoke quickly, excited, breathless. "Keanu." "Sandra." "People online are already talking. Someone saw you two meet. If you don't mind, can you confirm something? Are you two together? Are you getting married?" His words were careless, loud, pushed into a space that was never meant for the world. Sandra felt her heart drop. Everything that had been delicate and honest only moments ago now felt like it was being turned into spectacle. Keanu spoke first. His voice was calm, not sharp, not defensive, just steady. "Please put the phone down." The reporter hesitated. Keanu repeated himself, his voice still soft. "Please." There was something in his tone, not anger, but firmness rooted in deep respect. The reporter lowered the phone but did not stop watching them. Sandra took a slow breath. Everything inside her felt vulnerable, open, raw. She had never wanted the world to hear that conversation. Those words were not for headlines. They were for hearts, she whispered. "This is why I was afraid." Keanu turned to her, his gaze anchoring her like steady ground. "You do not have to fear this moment," he said softly. But she did. She feared misunderstanding, judgment, being turned into a story people twisted into whatever they needed it to be. Keanu continued, speaking only to her, even with the reporter watching. "You spoke your truth. There is no shame in that." Her eyes softened, but pain still lingered there. The cafe owner approached, apologizing, gently asking the reporter to step outside. As he left, he gave Sandra and Keanu one final look, a look full of curiosity, assumption, and something hungry. They both knew that expression well. The world was about to talk. Loudly. When the door closed again, the silence that returned was not peaceful this time. It was heavy, complicated. Sandra stared down at her hands. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. Keanu leaned forward just slightly. enough for his presence to steady the air between them. You do not have to figure everything out today. Not your feelings, not the future, not the world. We only need to face one moment at a time. Sandra swallowed, her voice fragile. And what about you? What do you feel now? Keanu took a breath, slow and full, like he was choosing words that needed to be true, not perfect. I feel calm, he said, because I meant what I said, and I do not want to live silently anymore. I have lost too much by holding back. Sandra's heart ached, not with pain, but with recognition. She knew loss too. She knew silence too. She knew the fear of loving and losing all too well. She whispered, I am afraid of loving someone and losing them. Keanu's eyes softened in a way that spoke years of unspoken stories. I know, he replied, but love is not something we lose. People go, life changes, but love stays inside us. It becomes part of who we are, and that is why it is worth the risk. A tear escaped Sandra's eye. She did not wipe it away. Keanu did not reach for her hand. He did not need to. Their hearts were already speaking. But before either of them could say more, Sandra's phone buzzed, a message from her agent. The news had already broken. Her name, Keanu's name, trending everywhere. The world had already decided it wanted answers, and now they would have to face not just their feelings, but the world that demanded to define them. When Sandra looked at her phone, her hands trembled. The notifications kept appearing one after another, so fast that her screen could not keep up. Her name and Keanu's name were being mentioned everywhere. Social media, blogs, entertainment shows. Strangers were already creating stories, filling the spaces between truth with guesses and imagination. She set the phone down slowly, almost carefully, like it was a fragile object she did not want to break. Keanu watched her, his eyes gentle. He said, We can leave through the back door. We do not have to deal with this right now. But Sandra shook her head. Her voice was small but steady. Running will not stop it. Keanu nodded. He respected her strength. Even when she did not feel strong, they stood up together. When they walked out of the cafe, cameras flashed from across the street. Someone had been waiting. Someone was always waiting. Voices began to rise. Are you two dating? Are you getting married? How long has this been going on? The noise felt sharp, pressing, heavy. Sandra froze for a moment. The world felt too loud, too close. She did not know what to say. Any word could be misunderstood, twisted, amplified. Keanu stepped closer, not to stand in front of her, not to shield her, but to stand beside her. Equal, steady, he whispered. Breathe. She inhaled. Slowly. Then the cafe manager came outside, waving his arms, asking the crowd to back up. They did not listen. The cameras only got closer. Keanu put a gentle hand near Sandra's back. A small grounding gesture, not possessive, not controlling, just reassurance. They walked to his car, but before they reached it, a woman stepped forward. She did not hold a camera. She did not shout. She simply spoke. I saw the video, she said softly. You looked human, not weak, not dramatic. Human. Thank you for showing that. Sandra stopped. She looked at the woman. The woman's eyes were kind, understanding, quiet. The woman continued. I felt something when I watched it, like I wasn't the only one who breaks sometimes. Thank you. Sandra felt her throat tighten, her chest soften. Her fear loosened just a little. She whispered back, Thank you. The woman smiled and stepped away. No pictures, no attention, just kindness. Keanu and Sandra reached the car and got in. When the doors closed, the noise outside became muffled, distant. But the silence inside was full, deep, heavy. Sandra stared forward. The emotion in her chest was not the same as before. It was no longer fear. It was something more complicated, something warmer, something that had been quiet for years and was now beginning to speak. She whispered, Why does it feel like the world is trying to push us into something big? Keanu looked at her. Maybe because we were always going to reach this moment, he said. Sooner or later, she turned her head toward him. Her eyes held old memories, laughter on old film sets, quiet talks between scenes, long pauses that meant more than words, all the small moments that had slowly built something that neither of them ever named. She said, "I do not know how to handle this," Keanu answered gently. "We do not handle it alone. We decide what we want. We choose our story, not the world." The simplicity of those words settled in her like warmth, spreading slowly across cold skin. But then, Sandra asked the question that had lived deep inside her for years. "Do you still mean it?" she whispered. "What you said earlier? That you would have married me?" Keanu did not look away. He did not hesitate. He did not soften the truth. "Yes," he said. "I meant every word." Sandra's breath shook. Keanu continued, his voice quiet and full of something deep. "And I still mean it." The car stayed still in the parking space for a long time. The world outside felt loud, messy, demanding. But inside the car, everything felt slowed down, like a deep breath held between two hearts. Sandra stared at Keanu, trying to understand the weight of his words. "I still mean it." Those words didn't feel like a confession. They felt like history, like everything they had been through silently had been leading here. Sandra's voice was soft, almost like she was afraid of breaking the moment. "Why me?" she asked. "There are many people who admire you, people who love you, people who would have walked into your life without hesitation. Why me?" Keanu took his time before answering. He didn't want to say something poetic or dramatic. He wanted to say something true. "Because you never tried to own me," he said quietly. "You never wanted me to be anything other than myself. You never demanded, never forced, never tried to make me more or less. With you, I could simply exist." Sandra felt her chest tighten, but not with sadness, with understanding, and with something she had been afraid to feel again. "And with you," she whispered, "I never had to pretend." The memory of the cafe moment returned. The moment where honesty broke through silence. Where both of them had stood exposed and still accepted. Sandra looked down at her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly. "I am scared," she admitted. Keanu nodded. "I am too." She looked up, surprised. He continued, "Love is not frightening because of what it gives. It is frightening because of what it can take. But hiding from it does not protect us. It only starves us." His voice was soft, steady, but full of emotion. Sandra looked at him, her eyes shining with tears that had not yet fallen. "I lost people I loved before," she said, "and a part of me stayed frozen with them. I don't know how to risk that again." Keanu reached forward, not to hold her, not to pull her closer, but simply to offer his hand, palm open. "No pressure, no demand, only invitation. You don't have to know," he said gently. "You only have to let your heart breathe again." Sandra looked at his hand. It was warm, steady, real, not a promise of forever, just a presence, something soft to hold on to in a world that had been too sharp for too long. She placed her hand in his, and the fear didn't disappear, but it softened. Before anything more could be said, Sandra's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Her agent. Then Keanu's phone rang. His agent. The world did not care about the slowness of hearts. The world wanted answers, statements, definitions, labels. Keanu exhaled, slow and heavy. "They want us to speak," he said. Sandra nodded. "They want us to choose the story for them." She whispered. The question now was not whether they felt something. The question was whether they were ready to protect it. Sandra squeezed his hand gently. "I don't want the world to turn this into something loud," she said. "I don't want to lose what we have by forcing it into headlines." Keanu nodded. "Then we don't speak to the world," he said. "Not until we know how to speak to each other." Sandra's eyes softened. "So what do we do now?" she asked. Keanu looked at her, calm and certain. "We take one step, not a promise, not a declaration, just a step, toward each other." Sandra breathed in, breathed out. "Okay," she whispered. "I can do one step." And then Keanu said words that made her heart pause. "Then let's stop running from what was always ours." They drove to a quiet place where no cameras followed, an old path near the hills, where the trees stood tall and the air felt calm. They walked slowly, not speaking, their hands brushing gently sometimes, sometimes not. The silence between them was not empty anymore. It was warm, full, alive. The sun was lowering, soft gold across the sky. Sandra stopped and looked out over the horizon. Her heart felt tender, vulnerable, open in a way she had not allowed for years. She said softly, "Do you think we waited too long?" Keanu stood beside her. His voice was gentle, like a quiet truth spoken into the wind. "We waited until we were ready to see each other clearly." Sandra nodded. Maybe that was true. Maybe they needed the years, the distance, the heartbreak, the lessons, to understand the weight of what they now stood inside of. She turned and looked at him, and there was no fear in her eyes now, only honesty. "I want to try," she whispered. "I want to see where this goes. I do not know what will happen. I do not know if we will get hurt, but I want to try, with you." Keanu let out a slow breath, like a weight he had carried for years finally loosened. "I want to try too," he replied, not to rush, not to force, just to be present. "One day at a time," she smiled then, a small soft smile, the kind that comes from the heart, not the face. And then Keanu did something he had never done before, something quiet, something gentle. He reached out and placed his hand on her cheek. His thumb brushed the side of her face softly, like he was memorizing the shape of her. She leaned into his touch without hesitation. He whispered, "I do not want to lose you," not to silence, not to fear. Sandra closed her eyes and breathed in his closeness. "You won't," she whispered back, "not as long as we choose each other." Their foreheads touched, just lightly. No kiss, no rush, just presence. Two hearts breathing together. After a moment, Sandra spoke again. "The world will ask questions," she said softly. "They will want labels, answers, stories." Keanu nodded. "Yes, but we do not owe them anything before we are ready." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "So when you said you would have married me?" Keanu smiled softly. "I said it because it was true," he replied. "And it is still true. But marriage is not something to rush. It is something to grow toward. Slowly. With care." Sandra felt something warm bloom inside her chest. Not excitement, not shock. Something deeper, hope. Keanu continued, his voice quiet, steady. "If we walk this path together, and if one day we look at each other and know it is right, then I will ask you again, not because of a moment, not because of a headline, but because loving you is something I choose, every day." Sandra felt her heart soften completely. "Then I will answer," she whispered, "when my heart is ready to speak that deeply too." They stood in the fading sunlight, holding the moment carefully between them. No promises of forever, no dramatic declarations, just truth. Soft, steady, real, the kind of love that grows slowly, the kind of love that lasts. They began walking back toward the car, side by side, step by step, just like they promised. Not forced, not rushed, just choosing each other, one step at a time.